and had a great call at the end of the day, and I go home like nothing. It's the best day ever. It's the law of averages, right? Some days you're going to win, some days you're going to lose. You wake up with the ability to make a decision if you're going to be happy or not. And I always wake up happy because nobody wants to deal with us with a sourpuss.
Welcome, ModelFAs. David DeCelle here, CEO of ModelFA and your host of the ModelFA podcast. And I'm very excited to bring our guest to you today for a multitude of reasons. But frankly, the main reason is we're going to make tech and data fun. So, Rick, hopefully you don't change now that we're recording, but I am bringing to you Rick Burgess, who is the chief bottle washer at Forms Logic. And my first question, first of all, welcome. But my first question, I was looking on LinkedIn. I was like, chief bottle washer, there's got to be a story behind that. So spill the beans, Rick. Let's start there.
The chief bottle washer is kind of an old-timey term. It's the guy that opens up the doors at the beginning of the day, turns on the coffee, makes sure everything's done. And at the end of the day, chief bottle washer was the guy that would wash all the bottles and glasses at the bar, hang them up before everyone else came in the next day. So it's first in, last out, expert at everything, master of nothing. It's why you hire people that are experts at things. But it's a title that stuck. And I actually get shit for it every now and again that, it's like unprofessional. I'm like, you'll hear from my conversation with you. If you don't like it, I don't care. It's just, that's who I am. Right?
Well, that's what I love. And we've had a couple of conversations leading up to this, and I just was gravitated towards your personality and the fact that you are who you are unapologetically. And I would argue that you're in a side of the industry that can be tough to understand. It can cause people to glaze over in a lot of instances, but you found a way to make it fun, at least for yourself, which let's be honest, that's most important. But walk us through, like, what is it that you do just to help set the stage with Forms Logic?
Well, sure. I mean, that's like the elevator pitch, right? You have 30 seconds, go. And my answer is always the same. I make forms not suck. And then the door closes and we ride up awkwardly for 27 seconds. Basically, it's, my partner and I have done a few things together, sort of serial entrepreneurial. We had a client that was a broker dealer, and we saw just how horrible the process was. And I was an old financial advisor back in the day and a wholesaler, so I experienced it. And when he said, I want to help him, I go, absolutely not. I am not letting us get into broker dealers and RIAs and insurance forms. No. I went upstairs to get changed. By the time I come back down, he had already had 3 shots with the guy and promised him everything, and we had a client. So we took him from like the Stone Age, to the Jetsons. In 6 months, we came from fully papered to fully paperless, right? But the interesting thing is my partner, Fred, he literally is a data guy. He's not a forms guy. We're not a forms company. We're a data company that has a forms problem. So when you think about it from that perspective, I could do a ton of things that no one else can do, because once you're dealing with data, form is just a window into a database. That's just what it is. I always tell the same funny story. What was the amazing journey from, cuneiform tabs, putting mud and hardening it, to a pencil? That was pretty impressive, right? And the only thing we really did was took it from there to a PDF on a screen, and that's where it sort of stopped for another 100 years. And no one's really done anything with it after that. So you hear about all these big data models and all this stuff, and chat GPT and all this. I'm like, that's great. Nobody wants to fill out forms, but you still have to. So I'm in this place where it's a wide open field of, innovation, and nobody wants to deal with it except for us. So that's why we can make it fun.
Love it. And I want to go down that path a little bit in a little bit more detail, particularly talking about some use cases, because
Sure.
when we yell out terms like data in forms, it's like, okay, I understand that kind of, but walk me through sort of, some case studies. But before we get there, you mentioned serial entrepreneur. I'm curious to know what's your journey been like up to this point? So like you finished up school whenever you finished up school, and how'd you get into the workplace? Did you start off entrepreneurial right off the bat? Did you have a job? You mentioned an advisor. Walk us through a bit of your journey. I'm sure there's some funny stories along the way, so feel free
Oh
to
my
leave those
God.
in.
Yeah. So some of this you're gonna have to cut out because it's maybe not PG. Went to college, was a horrible student in high school. Graduated at the bottom of my class because I was an athlete the whole time, right? So went to college on like a Prop 48 scholarship because I couldn't play football because I was academically ineligible, right? So I walked in, and my dad was a judge. So literally, I was walking a fine line anyway. I joined the Marines, and he literally walked into the Marines office and said, "Listen, he's going to go through one semester of school. If he doesn't like it, I'll drive him to Lejeune." Right, and that's literally where my journey started. I wanted to go kill people, right? That's just a teen with a lot of anger, right? So I went to school, and my advisor wouldn't tell me what I was good at, so he put me in like a few things. So I ended up with a triple major with a minor and some with math, and 3.5 years later, I graduated. I was like, I hated school, but I got through it. Played 3 sports, did everything, but I hated college because it was just great opportunity, great everything, but I had zero time, right? I did an internship on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and I stood next to a guy that Greenspan had cut rates or something. Well, he had a big position on, and he had an error. Yeah, that's called an out trade in that world. He thought he did 1,000. He did 100,000. 1 0 off. He made $35 million in less than 15 seconds. Market went from here to here, just that fast. And I looked around. I was like, this is how this works down here. I'm in. So I worked my butt off to get back onto the floor. Runner, trader, and then I went upstairs, and I was a math guy, right? I'm the worst person you want to meet. I'm a sales guy and a math guy and a sales body, right? So I'm constantly doing math in my head. But I figured out this little formula. Have you ever heard of flight to quality? A lot of your viewers are going to know what that is. It's when stocks go up, bonds go down, and vice versa. It's that interrelation of stocks and bonds. Well, as a trader, I looked at that and thought, there's something there. I could see I see a model. I see something. Well, I mathematically figured it out, put some proxies out there, and started trading it. And I started doing really, really well. Today, it'd be called a high-frequency trading system. I sold it to a large bank that's not silver. And I was not allowed to trade on the floor ever again because that's part of the process, right? So I became a financial advisor and hated it because you come from the floor where if you ever watch The Wolf of Wall Street, they didn't get it all the way right for the floor traders. All the drugs, all that stuff. They got it mostly right upstairs, but then you come onto the floor and it was 100 times worse.
I want to see that movie.
Oh my God, they would never be able to get it out. Never be able to get it out. But anyway, it was life changing, right? But where does your personality get forged? It gets forged in those first jobs that you come out of college in, right? And it was forged in a place where screaming and yelling and swearing was an adjective to get someone's attention. So think of 4,000 people, men mostly, back to front, chest to back, screaming in each other's ears and stabbing each other with pencils to get each other attention. And that's where I grew up at, right? That's where my personality came from. Then you put me into a place where I'm in an office and I'm calling people about IRAs and $2,000 contributions. And I was bored out of my mind. So they made me a wholesaler, and I had a great time doing that because I was blessed with a genetically enlarged liver. So I drank with all these advisors, learned all their business models, helped a ton of people build great businesses. I kept realizing I'd wake up at 3 a.m, not understand what city I was in because I got to bed at 2 a.m. the night before, 2 breakfasts later, 3 lunches, a dinner or 2, and drinks after work. And the guys that 2, 3, 4 years in, they were like leaving the bank, starting RIAs, enjoying their life with their families. And here I am asking if they want to go to drink at 2 a.m. later, right? So I had to change something. So I did what every RIA guy wants to do is I went to work at a bank, thought I'll raise $150 million at the bank, leave with 50 of it, 75 of it.
Yeah.
and fish with my clients all day long. That's what I'll do. Well, what I learned was that, you never put a wholesaler in a bank, because it was like shooting fish in a glass of water with a shotgun, right? So I went from like 0 to 38 million in like 6 months, all fee based. And my bank hated me. My trust department hated me because they were looking for high commission stuff. And I would never be the top guy. But by the time I left, I was the top guy and no one could touch me, right? And then I realized that I kept losing clients because the bank down the street would give them loans. And I started building a Rolodex of lenders that would help protect my AUM when the bank would say no. And that sent me down a distribution conversation of how to build distribution, how to build a company and build distribution, how to reach the most people, right? And that's when I met my partner. He taught me all about data and all about how the internet worked and how the world worked and how the world was moving this way. And you see it, but you don't realize it, right? Like you don't think about, Chat GBT and all this stuff as changing the world because you laugh about it failing right now. 10 years, 20 years down the line, you're gonna look back and say, why didn't I buy that company? It's like, you just don't know. But so I started down this data path with my partner. We sold a company. We came back into the forms world because there was just this horrible, horrible, horrible feeling of nobody's addressing this. These people, these financial advisors move more money around the world than anyone else. And they have a horrible, horrible experience doing it. They do the companies do, and nobody does it. So we said, we're going to try. And that's where Forms Logic was built. And that's where we started at. And it's never a straight line. It was a company that we used. It was like a fun thing for a long time. Solving problems is what I love doing now. The problem is you can't build a company solving individuals' problems. It's got to be bigger. So, we brought in a COO. We brought in these people that were very good at helping scale and keep the blinders on people like me and not saying yes to everything. So today, we're a fast growing company. And like I said, because we're a data centric company, we could do tons and tons and tons of things that no one else can do. We've been people tried to buy us 3 or 4 times already. And it's just, I'm not done having fun yet.
I'm so glad that I asked.
Does that help understand where I came from? Long journey.
It very much does. And it's cool to see kind of jumping like through the industry in different facets and getting a good understanding around how it works, what you like, don't like, and then seeing some problems that can be addressed. And even if you are kicking and screaming, not wanting to get into the broker-dealer, RIA, and insurance space, you maximize the opportunity. So your partner, although he's data-driven, must also be a good salesman, or at least a good salesman in selling you on the idea, or just frankly, hey, I made these promises and we can't drop the ball. We need to follow through.
That was pretty much what happened. And then he got me drunk and I forgot all about it. And the next day we had a company.
That's funny. So let's walk through some use cases. So again, data, forms, like to some folks that those are just words, right? So walk us through how advisors can, what problems you solve for advisors specifically, maybe, 2, 3 examples for maybe a smaller advisor, call it under 500 million, and then like the $1 billion firms and like the multi-billion dollar industries, maybe one sort of verbal case study for each, just as an example.
Sure. And I talk to a lot of people, so I have a lot of those. The interesting thing is there's things going on in the industry right now. So when I start giving some of these examples, it might be timely now, but maybe not in 10 years, right? But right now, you have this very interesting thing where everyone throws out these stats of most advisors use like 8 to 10 different apps or tools that are all independent. And I kept laughing about that because all of it revolves around the same thing, an interaction with the client. Every app, everything you do, it wraps around the sale of, the prospecting of, or the support of, the trading of a client, right? So the interesting thing is that client's data never changes. David is your name. David never changes from one place to another to another. You might get converted to a number in one firm, but you come back as a person to another firm. Your demographic data never changes. So when you think about someone that doing financial planning, e-money needs client data to get started. You need stuff. Well, here's the funny part. You either put it in beforehand as a prospecting tool or you do it afterwards as a support tool, right? Two different use cases. The interesting thing is, and we have this conversation all the time, who owns or where is your gold standard of data? When your client calls you and says, I moved down the hall, I'm not at unit B anymore, and I'm at unit E now. When you go to change that, think about, you have to change it in 20 different places. Sometimes you change it, it doesn't even matter. Unit B to unit E doesn't matter for E-money. It matters to Schwab or Pershing or Fidelity or Axos where they have to send stuff. It matters in other places, but so realistically, you want to build something or you want to remember, you need one place that should be doing or being your gold standard, right? And the reason we think it might be us is because when I fill out a Schwab form, I might fill out 300-400 data points. Your best CRMs top out at 150, 125. Then if you want to customize them to that degree, you're probably $500,000 in before you get to what I have to do anyway on a daily basis. So that comes back to, we're in a unique situation because of that data, right? That gives you a framework of this use case. So we walk into a firm and who's moving from one place to another. They're advisor in transition. We do a ton of that business because you'll get a download from Broadridge. You'll get a download from a Schwab, a Pershing, a TD, wherever, right? You'll get a download from your Salesforce, your Wealthbox, your wherever, right? Redtail. What do you do with all that data? Where are you put it? What are you going to do with it? So the key was we figured out a way to take all that data and pull it in. The advisor said, well, I want to go over to that firm over there. Great. We called the firm. When you get that firm's paperwork, this is the fun part. Some of the paperwork asks for last name, comma, first name, middle name. Some ask for full name. Some ask for first name, middle name, last name. What do? We rip it all apart and we can put it all back together. And in that case, we did, 600, 700 accounts in less than a half a second. Opened them all up, filled out all the paperwork, sent it to everywhere, right? And it was all done instantaneously. And instantaneously is we created everything, it all has a process. So that's a transition sort of an example. Let's go to an RIA. A $3 billion RIA down in New York City is a client of ours. They only use Schwab. And I said, well, help me understand what we can do to help you with your paperwork, your process. The guy's like, oh, we have it. That's all done. We don't have to talk about that. I'm like, I got to know now. Because now you're telling me that you figured it out. 3 guys in a firm figured out what no one else could figure out. Well, what they figured out was they asked Schwab, and Schwab sent them a part-time help person to fill out all their paperwork. That's not figuring it out. That's being big enough that they don't want to lose your business. You want you to keep going and selling, right? So what you run into is people that have this idea that they figured it out, but you're never going to move because they're not all that's an irreplaceable asset, right? So we actually started talking to them, and what they found out was they didn't own any of their data. None of their data was theirs. It was all on systems that weren't theirs. So we started building in all those redundancies. Then they were able to pull in a second custodian. They were able to pull in TPAs and third-party asset managers that they'd never been able to get on Schwab before, right? So stuff like that. So when you own your data, it opens up other options for yourself, right? We do a ton of alternative asset class stuff. To us, it's just another piece of paper. To other firms I deal with, they make a big deal out of it. And they have a special firm that does that. It's just another piece of paper, right? So we got to keep that in mind. And then you go to what's specifically happening today. You have firms, M&A firms, people like that are buying RIAs and BDs and rolling them up. Most of those people that we're supporting on that side, they have made 3, 4, 5 acquisitions. All these firms are still running on their own things that they build along the way. None of them have pulled all that data back and centrally located it. So it's almost like they're running as fast as they can to accumulate it, build some business pool and sell it, right? Or do whatever they're going to do with it. Problem is the liability underneath that, the risk under that. You don't know how to evaluate it, much less maximize it, right? So from that standpoint, some of those acquisition firms we deal with, we don't need them to change anything. We just need to be able to pull out all their data. And here's the most important thing: run reports across. I don't care if you're a Redtail user or a Wealthbox user or a Schwab user or a Salesforce user. I don't care where your data is. As long as I can get it back into a common warehouse, I can tell you everything about your practice, how fast you are, how slow you are, how maximize this, how you minimize that. So most people don't even realize on the data side, the power of the analytics behind the data you have that no one even pays attention to.
So and that's super helpful. And I have someone in mind, a friend of mine in the industry, and I don't know enough details to answer any follow-up questions. So I want to, we didn't get to that level of depth in what I'm about to share, but we were having a conversation and they're acquiring RIAs ranging from 50 million to $1 billion is what they're scooping up. But to the point where he was mentioning that they're like 12 months out, meaning like to integrate these people into the firm, they're about 12 months out. And I want to, and maybe this is your pitch, your value prop that we can share, because I'll probably share this episode with him before it goes live.
Right.
And maybe he'll make it past the first part. Maybe he doesn't, but just kidding. But to me, that seems like that's taking way too long. So I'm curious to know.
You said 12 months, right?
Correct. So for example, if a firm comes to them today and they say, "Hey, we want to roll up underneath you," based on their capacity. Based on their capacity, they're like, "Cool, we'll do it in 12 months." Like they're working on a rather large acquisition right now. I want to say it's like $1 billion or something like that. And they're like, it's setting us back like 90 to 120 days to fully integrate them. So walk us through why
you want to go in this example.
I want to,
because there's a lot of things.
I want to go deep because I'm going to send this to him before it goes live, and maybe I get you an intro call.
Okay. So there's a lot of things you got to think about there. One is, if they're buying them, are they moving them to a different custodian, or are they just repapering everything, or are they sort of getting disclosures and documents that just apply to their firm stuff, right? All those scenarios need to be answered. They're not all going to fit the same place, the same time, the same acquisition. Let's pick one. Your big firm, $1 billion, two advisors, that. $1 billion, you're probably talking about 600, 700, 1,000 accounts, maybe. It's not a lot of accounts, right? Households is what's more important there. So the key to that transition is very simple. Do you know where they're coming from? You do, because you would be buying it. In an RIA world, unlike a BD world, when you buy a book of business, you own the data. So you can actually see the data before it starts transitioning. In a BD world, you can't see any of the data before affiliation date, right? So the moment that contract's signed, I can step into that firm and say, great, it's a Schwab to Schwab. All I need to do is throw on an LPOA, a money movement, some other things. It's an update. It's not a repaper at that point, right? And that's what this example is. In that world, because we have straight through integration to Schwab, I can take an Excel download, put it all in the same place, hit a button, and I can come back to you with all the things you're missing immediately. Instantaneously. You're missing a driver's license here, an expiration there, this here, this here. Oh, there's out of 1,000 accounts, 800 of them are ready to go. hit the button, those all process immediately, send them to eSign, and I can process them straight through. That would take me 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. The hard part is getting an advisor and their firm to slow down long enough, because advisors by nature are horrible at paperwork. They're good at selling. They're good at managing. They're good at doing that. They're horrible at paperwork, right? So the first thing you got to remember in this example is, I'm assuming you can take a download because you own the data from all these different sources. We put them in one place, run it, screen it, make sure it all works, put it all up under the filters. I can show you all your paperwork before we ever process your paperwork. I can put required things on, transition stuff, all these things I can do there within weeks, not months, and I can hit a button. Funny side story to that. I've had custodians call me and tell me to stop sending things because I'm sending 1,000 accounts at a crack from DocuSign over. And they're like, stop. What do you mean stop? You told me to send everything. I sent everything. So we know we do it differently because you start getting custodians that tell you to slow down. Because when you give them a paperwork, they have KPIs that they have to hit. Within 24 hours, I'm going to open up this and this. You can only process so many so fast. Not everybody is electronic. They say they are, but they're not. So in that regard, that 12-month process can be brought down to, let's call it 1 month. Done. What's even more impressive in that case is every time they do one of these acquisitions, the staff on their side is still there. You probably have to hire staff on your side because now there's more data to deal with and more stuff to touch. So I wipe all that staff out on you, the acquirer's side, because it's just data. You need a data analyst. You don't need typers.
Now, does it change anything, Rick, if, let's say, the firm isn't just outright buying the other RIA, but they're merging together? How does that change things?
That changes it in the fact that I, as a firm, have the ability to act as a third-party servicer, which means I sign a contract with the firm being acquired or joining. I step through and say, hey, I'm here. I sign an agreement and a non-disclosure, all that stuff. I start getting all your data organized and getting all up and running. I actually can build all your paperwork, build everything, get it all ready to go. And the acquiring firm that's not allowed to see the data never steps foot across that boundary where they can get in trouble and see data, right? I actually stepped across, and I am a third party, right? So when we've had all the legal people and all that stuff go through it, think of it as I'm Salesforce at that point. I'm a CRM, right? My privacy policy is now in force and interactive with that data because I'm the one holding that data now. So the day of affiliation, it's when, and I say this kind of jokingly, but when you tell me that you're affiliated, don't tell me that you're going to affiliate, because when I hit the button, 300 data points times X amount of accounts times X amount of advisors is going to instantaneously be shared with your firm. So if you tell me to move it, I timestamp all that and I can come and get audited, and they have the data before you got affiliated. So that's why it's so much to a point of, I can tell you if it's going to be a successful transition or not. Because I just run a screen and say, see all these orange blocks? I can tell you that they're 85% the way there. I could tell you your NIGO rate. I can tell you all that stuff. I can't tell you Jimmy Jones that's, got an IRA, they don't have this data, because that's sharing data. I can share generalities. Yeah, this is going to be a good acquisition. This is not going to be a good acquisition.
Gotcha.
Because I'm looking at data as an aggregate, not as an individual thing. That's what we do in the back end.
Understood. So do you have insight? Because then I'm thinking, okay, that sounds great, but let's say you're sending out 1,000 DocuSigns, right, for clients to sign. At that point, is your job done, so to speak, or do you happen to have insight on, hey, if you send out 1,000 of these, 64% of them are going to sign right away. And then the other, 36%, it's going to take 3, 4, 5 weeks is what we've like. Do you have any insight after it's sent out to understand how much follow-up work will be needed to make sure that these people actually sign the stuff?
Yeah, well, it's funny you asked that question because that has a lot of different aspects to it that you don't even know you're asking. One is, let's say this particular podcast goes viral and everybody wants to be your guest, and 5,000 people ask to be on your program tomorrow morning. How long would it take you to start filtering through all those emails?
Too long.
Yeah, 4 hours, right? Because you have to do that. Yeah, that efficient. The answer is, we've learned over years of doing this. We actually put regulators on the advisors and how much they send and how much it can go out and how much can you send to custodians, because we're running into the human filter now of what is physically possible to deal with. So today, right now, if you opened up your email, I guarantee you there's a phishing or a spam or something in there that looks exactly like a Chase account, right? Your clients have been beat over the head for the last 20 years to not open up anything, right? Every one of those people is going to call your office. There is your first bottleneck. So the first thing we do is we send out an email on behalf of the advisor. On or about this date, you're going to get an email from DocuSign that is going to ask for signatures and all that, right? A lot of your younger clients are like, yeah. We talked about this. He's moving. They just go click, right? Here's the second side of that. We can actually take one client that has 3 accounts, put it all into one envelope, and now we've just wiped away all the redundancies of having opened 3 different things and the cost reduction. But that's regardless of this conversation. You've now maximized how many times you have to touch your client. I can actually say A client, B client, C client, let's go after the 80-20 rule. Let's go after where your most revenue is coming from first, right? And there might be little accounts there, but they're influential accounts. There's all these reasons people put stuff places. The end of the day is you and your assistant and the acquiring firm's team and 1,000 people from around the world can start calling your client base, walking them through this process, because I can put 50 people on a view that was only singular before. You take A through B, I'll take C through F, I'll take G through, and your staff can start calling people saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, did you see that email that came through? Let me walk you through it. On my side, you just hit a refresh button. You can watch them clicking things. So you can log in and you can actually see them going through the process. And nowadays, I would tell everybody, if you're going to go through that process, get a screen share, or a Zoom, instant Zoom or instant Teams going. Tell your client, hey, in your thing, there's a button. Click that button, and then you're staring at the client's screen. These older clients need help like that if you expect it to go fast, right? Other than that, you're going to sit across them, or you're going to mail them, or you're going to walk into their houses, right? Any big transition is not going to go that way. It's not going to be effective. It's going to be painful if you don't use technology. And so the answer is, you got to bring the right resources to the transition or to whatever it is to maximize that outcome.
And there, you saying, if I'm understanding this correctly, when you use the word, I think you said regulators, or you could call them valves, governors, levers, whatever.
Yep.
Not industry regulators, just to be
not
clear.
regulators. Yeah.
Yes. So are you saying like, hey, on your end, it's, hey, we got 1,000 ready to go live, boom, done. But then it would, hypothetically in this example, it would send out 50 of them a day for 20 days. Is that what you're saying when you're talking about that?
You can do it that way, or every couple hours, or, by queues, by tranches, because what you get is DocuSign. All these places are really good at telling you what's happening. Hey, your client opened it. Your client signed it. Your next client has it. Now add in that there's 50 of those going on, or 500 of them going on, all at the same time. You're going to miss an awful lot of things that are necessary to keep up on.
Gotcha. Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
let's so it's
That was a
funny.
dry conversation. It made me very uncomfortable.
No, not dry at all. That was well, at least for me, it was insightful.
I appreciate it. It didn't get there overnight. It took us a lot of bad transitions and a lot of
Mhm.
dark alleys to understand how this all works.
So I want to pivot, I'd say slightly, but this is a hard pivot. So one of one of the questions I ask all of our guests is a book that's had an impact on them or their favorite book. And oftentimes, almost every time, I get some sort of business slash personal development style book. And I
Yep.
saw yours, and you started off by saying, anything by Stephen King, but particularly the book It. And as I get to know your personality some more, I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Yeah.
So is that I guess, walk us through that. Is that your sort of unplugged time of just kind of getting lost in a book? Do you tend to stick with fiction, or do you like nonfiction? Just walk us through some of that.
So, so I'm going to ask you a question, and I don't know the answer today anymore, but I knew it back then. How many books do you think an average adult reads in a year
In a year?
for fun? For fun, just for fun.
Less than one. They maybe open it and don't finish it.
It's literally point something. It's less than one across the globe. So now think about what you and I do for a living, right? We talk to people, we interact with people, and in my world, I have to be technical at times. I spend lots of days perusing white papers and people's opinions and blogs and all this other crap. And I call it crap because it's all opinion based, right? It really is. But everybody has a spin, and you got to know what's out there. You got to know what's innovating, and you got to know all that stuff. And after a certain amount of time, you glaze over because everyone's retreading each other's work. And that's just what it is. Then I started unplugging. I got 5 kids, right? So, they're finally leaving now, which is fantastic.
So now you're actually able to unplug, is what you're saying.
Now I'm actually able to unplug. And my wife laughs because it's like, you're going to slide into your casket with your phone on your neck. And I'm like, well, that's just who I am. I don't vacation well. I don't slow down well. But what I do well is if I go on a walk or I go on a run, I've discovered audiobooks, that you could put it in. And if you've never done it, it's
What are those? I haven't heard of those before.
right. Yeah, exactly. I have this new firm called Spotify. I'll send you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Audible. But what I've learned is, and my oldest daughter taught me this. She goes, Dad, you're an idiot. There's only so much time in your life. Learn to listen to everything at 1.25, 1.5 times speed.
Mhm.
So and the first time you listen to something like that, it is literally like, it's like it sounds garbled, right? So I finally got to the point where I can consume it that fast. And what I'll do is I'll start listening to something. And if I'm really into it, I'll stop it, delete it, and go get the book. Because what I've learned is, at least for me, your mind is a lot more creative than anything else that they could put on a movie screen. So when I read Stephen King, and I have 2 signed leatherback editions, and I've been a Stephen King fan for my life. I like being afraid, I guess. I like my mind cooking up stuff. If you were to see on my phone right now, I literally, for Halloween's all I live for. You keep Christmas, you keep Thanksgiving, you keep everything you want. I dress up as a full-blown Grim Reaper, or I got this, I'm growing out my hair this year. I go as a big barbarian this year. With a full-blown battle axe. I go to Ren fairs. This is the stuff I enjoy, right? But, our world is so damn boring, and the technical stuff we read is so damn dry and boring. A self-help book, it literally is just someone else regurgitating something that they don't even follow themselves, more than likely, right? So I've never found value there. A technical book that teaches me something new, it's part of my job description. I don't really enjoy that. It's something I have to do, right? So when you say what's my favorite book, it's stepping out of reality and putting myself in these places and times, and that I can create vivid things for myself, and just forget that I work in one of the most dry, boring industries of the earth, and I do paperwork. which is worse.
Well, it's interesting, and I'm saying this half joking but half serious in that I'm guessing this, by the way, because I don't read scary books or thrillers or anything like that. But as I'm thinking out loud, I'm like, well, shit, if you're scaring yourself with a book, when scary things happen in business, it's like, well, at least it's not as scary as that I read over there. And it makes it not seem as challenging when you're in business, I would guess.
I got to tell you, anyone who tells you that business is easy has never been in business. So my partner and I laugh about this. There's two kinds of people. There's entrepreneurial, they build stuff, and there's intrapreneurial. They like to build stuff with safety nets, right? In the side of the company, I built this beautiful thing. Yeah, you still got paid. Nothing was wrong. And if you failed, there was a expectation of some failure, right? Or they threw more money at you to fix it. I don't know if you've ever sat and not been able to make payroll and people are looking at you like, were you on the company? There are things that there are times where I have lost weight, because of things that just stress is an amazing diet. I got to tell you. And it's happened to me a couple of times. But what ends up happening is nothing is a straight line. Nothing. If you think it's a straight line, just go try it for a while. And the fun part about my world is there's just not a lot of us left. There's big competitors of mine, LaserApp, DocuPace, Skyance. There's all these people. They're all either bought, owned by somebody else, or struggling, right? It's just how it is. The ones that raised a lot of capital are still moving and still growing, right? The fun part about is every day I wake up, it's a Monday or a Friday. It's either the best day of my life or the worst day of my life, depending on how the day's going. And I could tell you, I could bring that down to hourly because sometimes you get bad news. And as a small business, I'm still a small business owner, right? Until you get 10 million in revenue or some number, you're still a small business owner. I can tell you, I have had the shit kicked out of me all day. I've had a great call at the end of the day, and I go home like nothing is the best day ever. It's the law of averages, right? Some days you're going to win, some days you're going to lose. You wake up with the ability to make a decision if you're going to be happy or not. And I always wake up happy because nobody wants to deal with us with a silent puss. But yeah, business is scary, and you walk with the tightrope. You walk without netting every day. And the only way to keep on balance and keep going is to make your clients happy and keep innovating and never get caught with your feet flat on the ground. And I got to tell you, I've been caught with my feet flat on the ground a couple of times when I thought I was at the top of the mountain, just to realize, oh crap, there's another mountain. Gotta go do that one now.
Well, to give
you're
you credit with what you just said about, you have the choice to, be happy when you wake up in the morning, get your day started. Before we started recording, I said, Rick, how you doing? And he said, this is the best day ever. So
best day ever.
Good.
I make it that way. But
I
love to be in Malibu with, the California dime with a margarita, of course. but I love my wife, I love my business, and I love what I do every day. So I'm where I want to be and happy as I can be.
Love it. Well, Rick, this has been an absolute blast and pleasure. So I appreciate your time and insight. And if I'm listening to this and I need help with my paperwork, kidding, my data, my forms, my transitions, all the things that we talked about today, where do we find you guys?
Formslogic.com, and there's a schedule a meeting with us right there. You can always find me on LinkedIn, under paperwork, cheap bottle washer. The key is we're all so technically savvy these days. Just pick up a phone and say hi. And even if you just want to talk and not be sold anything, we love talking to people and helping them through challenges because we just learn more and more and more about what people are facing. So just give us a call. Let's talk.
Love it. Well, Rick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for everyone listening.
Pleasure's all mine, man. I've had a great hour.
Love it. And for everyone listening, appreciate your time as well. And we will catch you on the next episode. Take care.